We're live.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's the afternoon of April 23rd. Senate Education Committee. Yesterday we kind of completed our walkthrough of the House version of H950, 955. And the thing we weren't able to get to yesterday was the walk through the fiscal note. So to that end, we have Julia Richter as woman with us today. For that purpose, welcome.
Thank you.
You are on.
All right, great. Thank you. I'm Julia Richter, JFO.
Ezra Holden, JFO.
I will say I have a hard stop at 155 or 157, but I think you don't.
Correct.
And there is the fiscal note that's posted on the committee page under my name. I see you have printed copies in front of you.
Yeah.
Do you want me to share the screen or?
You'll have a hard copy.
Okay, sure. So I think I'll start sort of big picture on the fiscal note, and then we can get into any of the details that you want to. This very much was a team effort of putting this fiscal note together, me, Ezra, and Ted Barnett. And so I guess you've heard a whole walkthrough of the bill. So I would say big picture, the overall fiscal impact of this bill is unclear. And that is because impacts depend on outstanding policy decisions at both the state and local levels. That said, there are fiscal implications of many of the sections of the bill. So the fiscal note has sort of by section what the potential fiscal implications of each section are. There are some appropriations or amended uses of appropriations in the H955 as passed by the House. And so I'll draw your attention first to on page 2, table 1. And this gets to the known FY27 fiscal impacts in H955. And sort of big picture, the way to think about the bill and its funding construct is that the vast bulk of these appropriations or these costs, the 1.042 million, are funded by pre-existing appropriations. So it's not appropriating new funds. I'm not sure if you've heard testimony, but section C103 of the big bill, the budget, takes back some of the funds that were appropriated to the Agency of Education last year for the purpose of ed transformation, and takes some of those funds back, but doesn't distinguish the specific uses. It says we're taking some of these funds back for education transformation, and H955 says, and here is how we intend those uses to be of those funds. So as you can see, so section 4 of the bill establishes this CESA grant program. The total amount of that funding would be $90,000. That is funded by 30,000 of those previously appropriated funds that we just spoke about, those ed transformation funds existing in section C103 of the budget, as well as 60,000 of previously appropriated funds from the Ed Fund to AOE in FY26. Section 17 also establishes a number of expenses and grants, and all of these are also funded from those education transformation dollars that are pulled back in section C103 of the budget. H950, so in total, that's 1.042 million of previously appropriated funds that this bill is determining the uses for. And there's one new appropriation in the bill, which is in section 21, and that's 75,000 to JFO to hire a contractor to complete a cost of care analysis that would provide estimates for the current full cost of providing pre-K education. The one-time general fund appropriation. Before going further into the bill, while we're talking about these costs writ large, I thought it would be helpful to talk about how H 955 is contemplated in the Senate interacts with the yield bill and the big bill. As have been passed out of the Senate Finance Committee, Senate Appropriations. So Senate Appropriation, so taking a step back, you'll recall that the yield bill is the bill that establishes property tax rates and yields for the next fiscal year, right? And property tax rates are set at a level to ensure that the education fund is fully funded. So in doing that yield and remodeling, we need to know how much money is coming out of the education fund. And so the yield bill that is passed out of Senate Finance Committee does not assume any education transformation funds are appropriated out of the ed fund in FY27. So if there were to be new appropriations out of the education fund, the yield bill would need to be amended to raise property taxes to cover those appropriations. The big bill, as voted out of Senate Appropriations, includes the section, includes that same concept of sort of pulling back the Act 73 appropriation of about 1.4 million of the education transformation appropriation last year, and also holds in the general fund about 1.5 million of general fund for education transformation that hasn't yet been sorted out how those funds will be allocated. So all to say, right now, the general fund in the Senate construct has a pot of about 2.9 million for the education transformation bill to determine how that 2.9 million is to be done. Does that make sense? So those are the appropriations. I guess what would be of the most help? Do you want to walk through the sections with fiscal implications? Do you have specific questions? What would be most helpful for the committee?
Were you able to actually run a cost analysis that doing all this is going to save us any money or get more? Yeah, are we going to save anything, or you just have what our expenses are going to be for proceeding with this bill?
Yeah, I would say there's short answer is from JFO's perspective, the fiscal impact remains unclear. It depends on outstanding policy choices at the state and local level that haven't been made yet.
Okay, thanks.
But I think, yeah, walking through the sections with
Okay.
that have fiscal implications.
Okay. Do you want me to go through?
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you guys one general question. I'm not sure if you're gonna feel comfortable answering this or not, but if you're to have a tax bill with education implications associated with it, in this section 58 to 64, property tax classifications, we appear to be teeing up an increase of revenue from taxes, from property taxes from second homes. Where's this additional capital, this revenue intended to be used? Has that ever been disclosed to you guys? I can't find it in the language. And
Yes, so you're talking about sections 58 through 64, the property classifications. This is sort of the next step of the property classification work that was done in Act 73. So I would encourage you to look at Act 73 in addition to 955 to look at some of the intent language. I don't remember the intent language off the top of my head. That said, I will say that Act 73 required the Department of Taxes to come back with a report. It's a good report about property tax classifications, and it talks about how the multipliers could be set at different levels to cover different costs. So I think one example is to cover the cost of the homestead exemption. I don't remember the different parameters, but Act 73 laid out like tax in your report. Please tell us how your best estimate of the multipliers to cover these different things. So that would be one place. I would also say it is an outstanding policy decision as to what those tax multipliers are going to be.
Okay, thank you. And if it's possible, can we get the tax department's report uploaded to our website
Yeah, I can send it to Daphne,
committee?
I'll send it to Daphne by the end of the day.
Thank you.
So, and I think it's also, we have to keep in mind that our sections, 1 through 29. Everything, as we talked about yesterday, is not in this, it's not effective, it's effectively not in this committee.
Kirby.
I'm sorry, Kirby.
Mhm.
And then the part that we look to the end to school construction, it's joint jurisdiction.
Mhm.
So if we have questions about the Kirby section, it's with the finance committee.
Understood. I just wanted to highlight it that we effectively have a massive tax bill with a little bit of education transportation embedded into it, as opposed to the other way around. I saw this a year ago, and I'm seeing this again with a 100-page amendment.
Very right. Very right.
Okay.
Okay, so I think, looking at the time and knowing that I have a harder stop than Ezra, perhaps it makes sense to start talking about school construction. Like focus on school construction, and then, we can go back to the beginning.
So school construction starts in this.
That starts in section 65 through 78, and that's the bottom of page 9 of the fiscal notes. So you heard about these sections yesterday from John. Sections 65 through 78 amend the state aid for school construction program, which was already fleshed out in Act 73. This further works on that to expand state aid to include general obligation bonding. This is another piece of the bill where the overall fiscal impact of these sections is unclear and will depend on outstanding policy and funding decisions. That said, any future impacts to the state's general obligation debt service costs would be directly related to an increase in bonding indebtedness and market conditions at the time of debt issuance. And this is a little outside of the scope of this committee, but any material increase in general obligation debt service would, per statute, impact the calculation of the general fund transfer to the cash fund. So we can walk through sort of the primary sections that we called out in the fiscal note within school construction. Section 66, so I'm on page 10 of the fiscal note. Section 66 creates 4 permanent classified positions in AOE for the school construction division, and would require AOE to include funding for those positions in its FY28 budget request. So these positions are not funded in this bill because they're not for FY27, and it's basically having AOE come back, say how much these positions would cost. So an example where fiscal impact depends on the costs associated with those positions and associated policy and funding decisions regarding those positions. Section 67, this requires rules on school construction and capital outlay, requiring AOE to adopt rules, addressing prioritization and bonus incentives, supporting construction or renovations, supporting consolidation of school governance structures. This is rules, the impact of rules also, or the rules that are created could have a fiscal impact. Another report on school construction opportunities, that's section 68. Section 70 would require AOE to include in its annual budget submitted to the governor any projects contemplated for funding through state bonding. Section 72, this is amending the approval and funding for school construction projects, requiring AOE to identify projects with funding through general obligation bonding in its request for appropriations, and also require the Senate and House Education and Finance and Ways and Means to receive, to recommend total annual school construction completion. Amending the provisions of the program with respect to the aid for the total approved project. Of course, this is an example where the amounts awarded would be subject to an annual appropriation and only be released once the applicant has voted to fund or authorize.
When it says in the paragraph, it starts section 72.
Mhm.
Require the House Committees on Education, Ways and Means, and the Senate Committee to recommend to whom the appropriations committees.
I believe so. I would need to go back and check the
Okay.
language.
Okay,
This is one example where, one of the things that has been contemplated in the bill is, there's going to be money going out to school districts in the form of the education opportunity payment, right? And there are going to be additional funding streams as well, those categorical aid programs, and that will be included in the education payment. So this is one example of that. It also requires a treasurer in consultation with CDAC to recommend the annual state bonding support available and the annual debt subsidies to be awarded. So this is bringing the treasurer and CDAC into the mix. The next section 73, repealing prohibition on aid resulting from deferred maintenance. This would expand aid to a broader pool of projects, but we can't estimate the impact of the section. Section 74, this is the legacy debt aid program. So this would establish a legacy debt aid program for school districts that incurred debt prior to December 31, 2025. And those districts would be eligible to receive 100% of the debt service for those costs.
Where does CDAC come from?
CDAC is the Capital Debt Affordability Advisory Committee.
Is it a Vermont?
Yes. And it meets, I don't know how often it meets, but it's the committee that works to establish the appropriate level of bonding for the state, for the treasurer. So your institutions committee works closely with you.
Not for the reason.
So with the legacy debt aid program, we know under current law, all of that school construction debt lives within an education spending, right? So it is paid out of the education fund already. And what this is doing is saying under the new contract, school districts are going to be receiving a grant for the entire debt service that they incurred prior to December 31, 2025. So this won't increase the cost to the education fund, but because we're moving into a new state of finance and funding, this is shifting how those costs are covered.
so did I just understand you to say that the construct the bonding for money for the education, for the construction fund, and we would use it to pay off existing debt?
No.
Okay.
No, so I think there's a couple of different pieces of this. One is what happens with the school debt that exists, the debt service that exists already. That school districts are holding. And this is saying for that, the state is going to issue a 100% grant reimbursement to those school districts for that debt service. That's what section 74 is.
So it is what it said then, right? 'Cause we're gonna pay off that debt with a grant.
Oh, then I guess I misheard. We're gonna pay off that debt with a grant, yes, but we're not gonna pay off that debt with more debt.
So where's the money come from? Paying it off with?
That the funding source is unclear in the bill. But that would be a policy decision.
Okay.
But the bill doesn't contemplate using debt to pay off debt.
Okay.
That would be very poor fiscal practice. The debt, the new debt service, the new obligations That is for debt service that has not already been incurred. So that's related to the school construction aid program. So there's the question of how much debt service can be taken on at the state level for school construction. CDAC treasurer are going to come back with a recommendation about that. And then there's going to be this, the way Ways and Means was talking about it is like a capital stack, right? So the bonding plus aid plus this last piece, which is in sections 77 and 78, which is the supplemental school district spending for school construction. So that's that piece where school districts can vote to spend above their education opportunity payment. And it's equalized at the state level with respect to how much you can draw or keep from a tax rate. And the rest is recaptured at the state level. But for the school construction component, the supplemental district spending does not have a cap for school construction. And essentially, this is not the legal term, but essentially school districts, vote once, and then that is going to be what they will have to raise for supplemental district spending for school construction, once that has been approved.
Does the spending on new construction outside of a grant to help defray the cost, do the districts pay for that?
I think that it depends on how the award that is received by the school district. So that goes back to the
That's 50 to 90.
section 72, the 50 to 95%. And then the question of aid versus state bonding versus how much needs to be picked up from supplemental district spending. And I think one of the big questions is it will depend on those outstanding policy decisions about bonding levels and how much fund, like what is the total aid amount? And where is that? Where are those funds coming from? So that is big picture, the school construction sections.
Okay, questions of Julia? So this is our second structural section. Okay,
All right, so I will leave here in a couple of minutes, but I leave you in very good hands to go back and talk through the earlier sections.
thank you.
All right, thanks, Julia. All right, so is Chair okay with us going all the way back to section 2 and just
Section 2, yeah.
all right.
I ask a question, maybe this isn't a great question to ask, but if I am, let's say, going to a school board meeting and over the next 1 to 2 weeks, and they say, how is school construction going to work with the House bill? What would be the way to summarize this in several sentences, if that's even possible? Because there's a lot of, it seems like there's a lot of moving parts, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of it. Is there a way to summarize this from the most, 10,000 foot level?
I'll take a stab at it off the top of my head, and I could be leaving something out because I don't have anything prepared. So bear with me.
You also don't have to answer. And
But I think that, big picture, Act 73 created this school construction aid program. And H 955, as contemplated by the House, or as passed by the House, further expands the parameters of that school construction aid program and begins to work on the financing. And in doing so, creates sort of 3 different financing levers that work together, where there are a number of outstanding policy decisions of state bonding, state aid, and local supplemental district spending.
okay. That is helpful, because I knew that the supplemental district spending was one of those elements, and then there was state bonding, And then what was that second one?
state aid.
State aid.
Yeah, and that's out, that. Um. Perhaps it's helpful to see in section 72.
Can you give an example of state aid, just to illustrate it?
That'd be like a one-time appropriation.
It was, so
Bonding.
I'm just gonna read the sentence. The first sentence, of the second paragraph under section 72, this section would amend the award provisions of the program to provide aid of 50 to 95% of the total approved cost of the project in the form of a debt service subsidy. So like a grant, state bonding, or combination of both.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be, there isn't like an order that somebody that, and that the districts would have to go through. It would be one or all of them.
I think there is an order, and this is where it's getting outside of my bailiwick, and I would defer those questions to Dawn.
Oh.
In terms of like the whole process of how it all fits together.
That was helpful. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
So Ezra, we actually didn't walk out enough time for this. What's the rest of your day like? Thank you, Julia.
Yeah.
So actually, a good chunk of my day is actually watching the rest of your day. So,
So we could have you back in toward the end of the.
yeah, no, that's,
Okay.
yeah, that's fine. It looks like the committee's pretty busy with 9:55, 5:42, 9:31. So yeah,
But
so whenever you can.
Would like to finish your sections, but
Sure.
I think just that. Since you have flexibility, we'll be in touch as we get, you'll be watching it.
Yeah, so,
Okay, so thank you.
yes, you're welcome.
So by the way, we're gonna set something on for the discussion. So we're moving over to 9.1. Miscellaneous bill. We have a couple of witnesses to testify, starting with us.
Happy to do it together too.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. And do we have language for you to do? Yeah.
We had sent a memo
Oh, got it,
and then, language too.
got it.
So I think that this can be, oh, sorry, for the record, Wendy Koenig, University of Vermont.
Charlie Westerman, I'm the policy director at the Vermont Network Against Domestic Sexual Violence.
Thanks. I think that this is gonna be relatively, quick, so when the appropriation that, helped to fund the Intercollegiate Sexual Harm Prevention Council was repealed, Sarah Robinson and I had a conversation, and we talked with other folks on the council about the fact that we think it's important, regardless of whether there's an appropriation from the state or not, to keep working on this issue because it's important for college campuses and for the state. And so we had some language that was drafted by our general counsel's office and reviewed by the network, and that is what we have given to you that we're suggesting might be added to the miscellaneous ed bill. And essentially what it does is allow all colleges and universities to participate in the council. We had sort of more limited membership in terms of the higher ed institutions before, and one of the suggestions that was made is that every institution be able to have somebody on the council to discuss sexual violence prevention. And so you can see that we list who the membership should be, which includes folks from the network, folks from higher education, forensic nursing folks, and someone from the Commission of Public Safety. And the duties of the council mostly are to share best practices regarding sexual violence prevention, talking about education, mitigating harm on campuses, et cetera. Sharing information about our activities, which I think is going to be important because many of our schools are in close proximity to each other where they are, and we can share resources that way. And we talk about having meetings, and we're talking about meeting 2 times a year. And so the way that we've envisioned that is that schools will share responsibility for that. We'll rotate where it is. The university can host it 1 time a year, a private college can host the next, and we'll move around the state so that it makes it sort of more equitable for folks as to where the meetings are, and making that easier for people. So would you like to add?
I would just say that we really appreciate the committee's ongoing commitment to preventing sexual violence and the ongoing interest from the higher ed learning community in investing time and information sharing and training on this issue. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Need somebody to call the first meeting, I guess.
We will be happy to do that. I just have one more thing to add. And I did get a note from my general counsel's office that in section D, where it says the council shall select co-chairs from among its members representing a public institution and 1 representing a private institution. She wanted us to add the word public higher education institution or private higher education institution. That was an error that we left that language out.
You just mean adding the words higher education.
Yeah.
That's,
But
yeah, sure, yeah.
what's a Vermont forensic nursing program? And why, can you explain why would they be a member of this?
Absolutely. So the Vermont Forensic Nursing Program, it's also sometimes called SANE, Sexual Assault Nurse Examiners. These are trained medical professionals who support survivors of sexual assault and abuse when they go into a medical facility after. They provide a variety of forms of care, and they also collect forensic evidence using a kind of standardized forensic kit. There are hundreds of SANE exams that are performed each year in 16 hospitals across the state. The Vermont Forensic Nursing Program is housed within the Vermont network, and we provide training, certification, and coordination to the SANEs that are working across the state. And of course, folks who are in higher education institutions also access SANE exams, and in some ways have unique experiences and needs related to them.
Got it. I just had no idea how it
Yeah.
fit. Okay. Second question. And the young lady who led this department has not been in the education committee for a couple of years, but there was a former state trooper that was in some type of it's not a public safety role, but it's a it's a short cropped hair, very much. We were talking about bullying and what have you. The sexual assault I thought was inside. I think of his name on the face, right? No, it's a she. She. I'm just wondering if they're big. No.
I can't remember her name, but I know who you're talking.
I'm just wondering if we're leaving somebody out who's and I'm not sure if they were AOE or if they were just affiliated, but
They were in AOE.
they were in AOE.
And
Is AOE, is that like, so you're talking about higher ed?
Yeah.
AOE is only so K through 12 or what have you. Is that correct? So you wouldn't,
There's someone in AOE who addresses higher education needs as well. But it's neutral in K through 12.
I did speak about a separate council in front of this committee last week, and with Big Hartman, who is the executive director of the Human Rights Commission. And I'd be happy to talk to you about this other council, but it is separate from the
it's not a council, it's an individual. She was, her sole reason for existence for hiring is assault, bullying and what have you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, man.
I know you're-
So in
Take
the last, in section D, the sub 5, it says the council may invite or consult other community representatives as appropriate. So that sounds like the kind of person that we might want to bring to one of these.
Yeah, all I'm saying is that she's like employed
Okay,
full time, that's her mission. And she's kind of standing out that somebody who's that dedicated to the topic is not on the list already.
when you all figure out who it is, can you send the name to me?
Give me 5 minutes of investigating.
Got it.
Other questions? So there's no funding attached to this. You're just asking for us to create it in the statute and.
Again, so in health and welfare 4 years ago, we had this, I believe, something similar to this with the same task force. I'm sure it was task force or council, and they were funded. 20,000. Is this a different group or the same group?
Same group.
Same. Okay. What happened to that fund?
The funding was rescinded, was sunsetted, yeah.
Okay.
So what we're suggesting is that we'll carry it forward without appropriation.
Okay.
And that the colleges will share the cost of your time.
And it's in largely the same form that it was.
Yes, except for we're letting, every college have, and there was membership from AVIC. And I think they had 2 people, and now we're saying each college can have a representative there if they would like to.
What's the committee sense?
Yeah.
And
I've had a suggestion.
okay. So we'll, subject to the research.
D Barbic.
Does it say or
Just up there. Yeah. Director of Violence Prevention.
And AOE. So can you have a chat? Just leave it to you. Have a chat and see whether it makes sense for us to add that or not. So, okay. So getting a sense of the committee, we're good to add this in. Okay. And subject to, thinking about whether anybody drafting it, just you want to think about some questions here. Yeah, okay. Essentially. Yeah,
Many thanks.
yeah, okay.
Pair bonders, if I may just speak very briefly about the other council, the Youth Harassment and Bullying Advisory Council.
Sure.
So in addition, last week I was in front of you all speaking about the Hazing, Harassment and Bullying Advisory Council in relation to the chronic absenteeism bill. I just wanted to note that the committee would find the miscellaneous bill as a more appropriate vehicle for that language. That's something that we would very much be open to and appreciate your consideration. I sent some draft legislative language to the committee last week. I would be happy, I know it was posted, but I would be happy to bring it back up to the top of your inbox for consideration as you all consider miscellaneous bill, Margaret.
So I had a sense that we were thinking about that in the absenteeism bill. I
Okay.
remember you said both
Mm-hmm.
go to place. Why don't we bring that back up to the top of our boxes right now?
Perfect.
Let's have a quick discussion.
I'd be happy to. Thank you. Sorry, the Wi-Fi in this building it's tough sometimes. I just resent the language. So it should come through in a moment. And just to very briefly recap, this is a council that is charged with coordinating the state's response to hazing, harassment, and bullying. One piece of its work is propagating and updating model policy on hazing, harassment, and bullying that is then distributed to Vermont K-12 schools. This council has been inactive for extended periods of time and most recently has struggled to reach a quorum at meetings. I think there is renewed investment from a variety of different stakeholders in making this council work. But what we heard from the chair of the council, Vic Hartman, and what we've observed is that a revised charge and membership would support the council's continued work and improve its service to schools. I would be happy to answer any questions or walk through the language if that would be helpful.
Why don't we walk through the language quickly? We'll have it in front of us,
Perfect.
or some question.
Can we display?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I have this Zoom link, but I'm happy. Kathy, would you mind sending it to you? Yeah, thank you so much.
In the email if you find it before I get to you.
Okay. We'll see. Okay, I'm bringing it up now.
There you are.
So this council exists in statute. And so we are striking some language that we then filled out after. So the council, as I noted, adopts a model policy on hazing, harassment, and bullying, and then notes that AOE provides the council with administrative support. And then we note the new membership of the council. So the Secretary of Ed.
You don't need to read.
Perfect.
Well, actually, maybe you do. I'm sorry, because I have it in front of me. I've already done this.
So these are principal school board members, independent folks working in our education institutions that are appointed by their kind of membership and representative organizations to provide their really on the ground experience and the needs that they see in their schools to the council. The executive director of Human Rights Commission, executive director of Independent Schools, a member appointed by the Coalition for Disability Rights. This is a coalition of a number of disability advocacy organizations within the state. A student member appointed by both Outright Vermont and the chair of the advisory council, a member from the Commission on Women, from the Office of Racial Equity, from the Vermont Network, and a parent or caregiver appointed by the Vermont Family Network. This specifies the charge of the council a bit more, that they must meet at least 4 times in the year. They revise and coordinate HHB. They review the model policy every 2 years, beginning in 2026. And as I noted in my testimony last week, there's a current effort to update the HHB model policy. We certainly appreciate that effort and do believe that the policy updates are needed. The last time the policy was updated was in 2016, 10 years ago, and we see a need for more frequent reviews of the policy to ensure it serves students well.
Who has ultimate responsibility for the policy?
The agency of education.
Okay. And this is the council is advisor to the secretary.
Exactly.
Got it.
That the council can generate and distribute resources on hazing, harassment, and bullying. And that they should annually solicit input from students, parents, and schools on HHB. It also notes that they will submit a written report to the education committees, which will hold a joint legislative hearing each legislative session to review the report. And that the report will be provided to the State Board of Education as well.
But can you go back up to the, what's the mission of the council? See what they meet 2 times a year, four times a year, et cetera. Where's the mission statement?
Mm-hmm. So, well, my interpretation of the mission statement is really captured in the duties of the council.
See, I'm always suspect, and the first line is how many times you'll meet and not what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
What are they going to do?
So as far as what they're going to do, I think the meat starts in here, which is review and coordinate school activities related to prevention and response to hazing, harassment, and bullying. Review that model policy every 2 years. Generate and distribute resources on hazing, harassment, and bullying to student professionals. And annually solicit input from students, parents, and schools on hazing, harassment, and bullying. And, I think that there are so many needs in this area of work. We recognize that the advisory council cannot meet every need, but we do think that if they even just fulfill these duties, it would be a really significant improvement and an investment in the future of this work.
And again, no funding is attached to this.
Where's per diem?
Oh, there is. Okay.
So there are 2 student members that are part of the council, and there's jurisdiction for these organizations around who they appoint. So that could be someone who is not operating in their professional capacity.
Thanks. Any other questions? Yes.
You mentioned that the council was having a challenge with meeting quorum.
Mm-hmm.
How does this change? How does this inspire the group to participate, provide meetings with people?
It's a great question. So I think in 2 ways. What I have heard is that the council really needs additional guidance around what they're going to do, what their mission is. And if you look at, so this is current statute, and there's really little detail at all around what this council is supposed to do right now. They develop and from time to time update that policy. They review and coordinate HHB, and that is it. And so it's really, I see so many needs in this area, but it's, I think, challenging for any group when you don't really know what your duties are to then accomplish that. I would also say that if you go down to the membership here, there are many folks who are not currently part of the council who attend council meetings. I'm not on the council, but when I'm able, have attended. And I think that having some of the people who are really invested in this work, who work with HHB day in and day out in their jobs, and inviting them to really have a seat at the table would be a meaningful step and add more energy to the group.
Yes.
So who's really driving to have this done? And I understand you're both here, but is there others that are saying, hey, we need to get this more people on here and more to make the committee so that it gathers, I guess, and feels more responsive.
Mm-hmm. Well, I won't implicate Wendy in this because it's a separate council.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But I have had conversations with a number of different stakeholders who are part of the council, I think there is agreement from most people who engage in it that the council is not working right now. And, you know, you heard from the chair of the council, Vic Hartman at the Human Rights Commission, who has also been involved in this effort.
I think that's good for now. Thank you.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
Thanks.
I appreciate your consideration.
Thanks. That-
That's
Do you anticipate having 2 witnesses again this afternoon?
No, well, it's fine.
Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel, how can I help you?
If you just wanted
What
to
are we doing?
walk through 931 and.
Walk through
I'm
931?
sorry.
Oh, markup, okay.
Walk on. So, do we have a copy of 931? What section? Okay.
Let's, so there's an instance of amendment on your website because that is the only change you have made thus far. So the change will not be reflected when you're looking at the whole bill.
So let's just walk through it. We're trying to get this bill out.
Can I
Yes.
flag something?
Yeah.
I mean, since it is the miscellaneous ed bill, if there are other things that feel harder to jam into a separate bill, it is a useful vehicle. And in that spirit, I have been working with the House on the ed tech bill. We want to fix some of the definitions and things so that it's a tighter bill. It works to actually get us more information from the Secretary of State's office. Secondarily, I don't think it would be too much of a stretch to add to that bill some kind of study group, et cetera, to really look into how to create a model policy.
Would that be in the other bill?
That would be in the other bill. There's something I think we should consider doing now in relation to ed tech. And that is many states are looking at putting a pause on the use of AI chatbots in any educational technology. There's a group called Fair Play in Vermont, and they're working on getting us language. They are working with schools directly in Vermont right now to put a 5-year pause on AI chatbots. I sent you all what I considered a very disturbing program that you can both purchase through VitalLearn right now, where a young girl on her phone, her best friend is an AI chatbot, and you watch her talk to her AI chatbot friend. I don't know, Mr. Chair, I didn't have a chance to ask you, is that something else you think we could consider for that bill on ed tech? It is ed tech related. Otherwise, this seemed like the only other vehicle.
Let's think about us being in the ed tech bill.
Okay.
If you want to propose for that.
Okay.
And, so page 1, as passed by the House. And this, Beth, has to do with the moratorium of approval of new independent schools shall not apply to changes in ownership of therapeutic schools. Therapeutic independent schools, etc. is defined. My sense is that we do not have any issue with this. Is there any? Yeah,
We're going by the as passed.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any issue with the language that's in here, but I will go on the record as saying that I don't believe the moratorium on approved independent schools is necessary in the first place, period.
Period. Noted. Okay, section 2. Beth, can you just remind us as we go?
Remind you what the sections are?
Well, yeah, so this was the Interstate Compact for Education.
Yes, this is Vermont Joint Section 2. Is adding chapter 35 to Title 16, which is the Interstate Compact for Education. Vermont was a member of the compact until the early to mid 90s, and we withdrew. But in the meantime, we have been sporadically paying dues, and we have also sporadically been appointing council members or compact members.
That's testing.
I don't know what those people are doing, but there have been appointments made. And I believe we're one of 2 states that are currently not members of the compact. Section 2 is readopting that compact language as it exists today. There's very little substantive changes from what it looked like in the 90s to today. Section 2 is the Interstate Compact for Education.
We're good?
Yes.
Okay. I'm marking that as, I'm marking in section 1 and section 2 as okay. And actually, that goes on for a while.
Yes, it takes you all the way to page 15. Well, technically page 14.
Can you comment again? I know you covered this before, but section 3 through 12, what has been removed?
Section 3 through 12 is passed by House, is voted out of House Education, were amendments to chapter 10 and title 16, the BOCES chapter, that just made the language change or the name change from BOCES to CESA. And that,
So, but typically, wouldn't that reference ESA, blah, 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 section something as opposed to,
no, they've been deleted from the bill.
well, why would they pass us as passed by the House? Why would something have in it a section? It's just a weird format. I'm not sure.
This is a common format when bills are moving through different committees and they're all making their own amendments. If it is not a strike all amendment, then if it's instances of amendment, then those are sections that are being deleted are going to show up just as they do on page 14.
Thank you.
And this is all simply changing the terminology for both.
Just the terminology, none of the other substantive changes that are in H 955.
So if we didn't want to change them, we would reject the deletions.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know why we're changing that. But, you know, not to throw a spanner into the gear, but we have legislation.
Tomatoes, tomatoes.
This is not the way, you can't, just by deleting the deleteds doesn't reintroduce that language. So this would not be the vehicle to do that. You would, if you wanted to negate the changes that have been made in H 955, you would have to make them in your amendment to H 955.
Not be a 931.
Correct. We shouldn't be amending various bills that are
Why
traveling
did they do?
because they amended this bill.
Okay. Just trying to try it.
Okay. I forgot that, well, I don't. So then we go to the class size minimums.
Yes, and you do have an instance of amendment, separate document, it's draft 2.1.
So if we go to the committee, we have that language. It's purchased. Okay. This is, as you will recall, we had the discussion about minimum class sizes, and there were some people who were in favor of something limited, and I heard that discussion. And then what this proposes to do is not have them, leave them in place, but they don't go into effect until such time as the foundation, all the contingencies are met and the foundation will not actually being effective. So one way to think about it, to the extent that the minimum class size classes had a total 5-year rollout as described to us, that rollout would start. The 5 years wouldn't even start for at least 3 years, or until this is the way it came to us. It would start either when the rules are done or on July 1 of 2027.
Correct.
So we're extending significantly.
So we're saying that class size minimums are still going to be required and it's something that the Secretary of the State Board of Education will consider, but we're just delaying it by a couple of years.
Yeah, the clock, there's a question that had been, the reason the House did its work was that there was some confusion about when the clock starts ticking on the 3 years, and then the 2 extra years, but the 3 years. And so they set it as either when the board adopts rules, which could be as early as March, as I recall, or July 1 of 27, whichever comes first. This pushes it out. The clock doesn't start ticking on the 3 years until all the contingencies have been met and the foundation for the has gone into effect, which might mean that before it actually affected anybody, it would be in 8 years.
So the amendment proposes to delay it. This version that we have in front of us is passed by the House, contemplates not having it apply.
No, it has it. The House version has it start no later than July 1, 2027. The clock tick.
Failure. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Isn't it just a record keeping clock? That the 3 years that we're putting on the table, or the clock starts here in 2027. Not that all the levers start getting pulled 2027. It's just we need to report and we collect that data.
It's not least, the agency does.
Right.
And then the agency, after 2 more years, has the ability to make a recommendation to the state board to do something about schools that don't meet the class sizes. It's based on a 3-year rolling average. So consider our sheet.
So I have a vague recollection of asking a question along the lines of, what does it mean for the foundation formula to be effective? And who's making that determination in order to start invoking the class size minimums?
Under the House construct, under Act 73, there was some precondition before the foundation formula actually went into effect. The House added more in 955, so there's a bunch of boxes that have to get checked before the foundation formula can go into effect, although it is scheduled to go into effect otherwise on
July 1, 2029. I'm sorry, 30.
Yeah, the House moved it to
I think
30.
30.
Under the current, under 73, it was 29, now 30, in their proposed legislation. So we have, in a way, we have the don't do anything approach, which left some confusion. The House version, no later than July 1, 2027. This version, which pushes it off until foundation formula is actually in effect.
So if it miraculously came into effect sooner, this would start when that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so
I think that's safe. Fair.
Means there's still going to be a process in which the State Board of Education defines what a grade is, or what a class is, because I know there were questions of how many students are we talking about? 10 students per a literal classroom or 10 students per grade? How are we talking about teachers and the paraeducator, or just the teacher, and the staff to student ratio. What staff, and in what ways do they contribute to that student to staff ratio?
I think it's actually just class sizes, ratios, if I recall. And this doesn't change anything from Act 73. It just starts the clock ticking later or whatever. To answer your questions.
Right, so, well, I guess, is there going to be more clarification in the rulemaking process as to what a class is? Are we talking about a classroom or a class of kids graduating in a certain year?
You can add to that.
There are definitions in H 955 as passed by the House for class, for, I don't remember what they are, but there are some definitions in there.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
So when we passed class size minimums, we were waiting for the redistricting task force to come back, and somehow this was all going to fit together in what we're asking districts to do. I still feel, especially at the elementary and middle level, that with that this should be addressed with whatever mapping we achieve. I would rather say you have to have districts or supervisory unions between 2,000 and 4,000 than dictate class size. What we heard from our witnesses is that some years they might have 8 kids, some years they might have 12. And I just think this is too much ongoing uncertainty. Like, I just don't, for moving the date out and continuing this uncertainty, I think we're asking them to do other things.
Well, we had the testimony we received was asking us to push it out because there's so much going on in the next few years. They didn't want to have to think about it. And then if we pushed it out and the clock didn't start ticking till after all of that was done, that would make the legislative right now and relieve them of some stress.
What I remember hearing, and maybe I was listening more for this with some bias, but they really just said this continues to happen to us. Like this ongoing talk of education reform keeps moving the goalposts on them. And they said that the biggest challenge we have right now is this uncertainty. It's meant they have to stop some conversations and start other conversations and put some things on hold, but we keep changing what metrics we're expecting them to be. So I just don't think this isn't a metric that's backed up in research.
It's
not.
One of the sort of, I will say, unwritten rules we have had with the House sort of is not to relitigate parts of this that passed last year. And they've opened the door to pushing it out, so I was, you can push it out, but,
Okay, if I appreciate you being willing to say that on the record, just because I don't like the continued, and then when you finish this, we're gonna ask you to do this. They just want to teach kids, like.
I'm sympathetic to my words. But I think they all said at least push it out.
They did all say at least push it out, so I can live with that.
Take a different perspective. What my comment about this particular section in relation to H 931 is that this particular section, section 13, really belongs in 955. And it should be struck.
That's a total option. That is
Thinking that too.
that is a completely legitimate.
It's all part of the bigger whole. Very good. That would be my,
So, okay,
we can further adjudicate whether the date is correct.
let's take that fact then, and we'll strike this from the miscellaneous, this section from this miscellaneous. Fine on that. But hang on to it.
One more section. Scroll up 14. Page 6.
Yeah. And then we also have the potential for adding this,
Which,
apart from Wendy. Well, so right now, this moment, we're on page 16. Go to page 16. So we have just struck section 13. The class size difference on page 15. Decided we're not going to keep that in this bill. And now we're moving to section 16. I'm sorry, page 16, section 14. Agency of Education. Can you remind us what's in here?
This is the background check requirement for agency of education employees or consultants. If that person will have or have the potential to have unsupervised contact with students. 16.
This came from AOE. Yeah, I'll submit, so tomorrow all the Eagle Scouts come in here, I'll submit the scouts learned a very valuable lesson over decades of youth contact with adults. Very important on, I'll leave it at that. I fully support this measure. So we have at least one indicator of citizen safety.
By writing down an okay next to section 14. Okay,
Are the Eagle Scouts coming into our committee? Okay.
No,
Oh, okay.
statements.
that then takes us to the okay,
Oh, I am okay for the second. I think I do remember a question regarding line 7. Such person will have or has the potential to have unsupervised contact with the students. So what about background checks for the people who would have supervised contact? Or is that
Call the decision.
so? Okay.
to articulate the question.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess that is the question. Why would people who have supervised contact with students not get background checks?
Oh, I think there was some thought that like somebody going into, like you or any of us going into a class as a guest or whatever, they supervise, or maybe it was.
Well, I mean, it's for part-time or full-time employment or temporary employment, not just visitors. Yeah, not visitors.
So rationale. Jill, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. For the record, Jill Bruce Campbell, Deputy Secretary of Education. It's consistent with other language that exists in other statute and other requirements in districts. It would, in essence, cover any AOE employee, temporary, part-time, limited service, full-time, or contractor who's in essence going into the school. Because at any point that we do like school visits, we may end up in a room with students that, you know, if an adult steps out of the room. So it's actually going to cover any of our folks working in the field. What it wouldn't require is, let's say, I'm giving an in-person presentation to a school board and there's students in the room. So that would be like supervised. But generally speaking, it's going to cover all of our staff and our contractors that are out in the field, because at any point, you know, might be in a hallway and bump into a student. So very consistent with the same requirements for parent volunteers or community volunteers.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Section 15.
Section 15 goes along with section 14. It's amending another statute within the same subchapter in Title 16 that just adds AOE to the list of folks who need to comply with this statute because they're now doing background checks.
Good.
Okay. That takes us to the language that's looked at at the beginning of the day. Got you a copy of this?
It's on your website.
Okay.
Yep.
And we had a little conversation about like private higher education institution. Conceptually subject to that traffic and put into Everybody okay with this?
Yes.
Okay. Um,
Probably if I can find it here.
second.
Yeah, good. One general comment about miscellaneous landfill. I understand you want to move it. I'm just wondering if it's worth hanging on to for another week to see if there's something that we need a vehicle to move kind of like what's the right word?
No, it's a good point. We could be ready to go. And so actually, yeah, this, other than striking, whatever that section was, misunderstood. Adding this, we could look at another draft. Why don't we, I guess we're gonna watch the one to look at it next meeting.
Sure, you have me booked for tomorrow.
Okay, we'll get one. That will work. If that works. Okay. So we're active in the sleep. We are exactly on constant rate. And we're going to come back. So we come back if we have in front of them 9:30 to 5.